My class over the couple of years now, I remember 3 years of this class. I've been giving classes really even before I made Aliyah. When I would come here, I would give classes in the late great in Israel Center, and but this class started with a lunch and learn, which was supported and by I see Roseanne is not here, she's my regular, is entitled Trailblazing Through the Text of Tanakh. And besides the fact that I played around with the T's, it really expresses the approach that I take, which is, as opposed to most who let us know the Mephoshim, the Ramban said this, and the Ibn Ezra said that, and so on and so forth. I focus upon the text itself. Yes, there are times I'll say this text is explained by the Ibn Ezra or by the Ramban or by Rashi, but the point that I make is there's so much that we learn that we think we know about the stories in the Torah that actually are not in the Torah. They aren't in the text. And then we have to understand, well, what does the text say? And then why did the rabbi say this? I give examples. The famous one that I tell with the kids all the time. Everybody knows that Rivka was 3 years old when Yitzchak married her. Well, it's nowhere found in the Torah. It's nowhere. It's a midrash that spread very nicely, and every kid in about second grade knows all about that. Doesn't tell them the midrash that says, another midrash that says she was 16 years old. That they didn't tell. So that was never accepted. People never know that. They say, oh, she was 3 years old. But you go through the text, it's not there. 2 weeks ago, I gave a class here about the sin of the golden calf. And I pointed out there, just as an example, that the knowledge that everybody had that Israel, as terrible it was, but they made a mistake because Moshe was supposed to return in 40 days. They miscounted it, the Chazal say, and that's why the whole sin came about, because they didn't wait for Moshe to come down. And I point out when I open the Torah that there's absolutely nowhere, anywhere in the Torah, where it said that Moshe was supposed to come back after 40 days. Never. When he went up to Har Sinai, even before the Aseret had Dibrot, he went up for half a day because God was saying, tell the people this, and then he came down and this. Now he went up after he had gone up for a couple of hours last time. So he goes up a couple of days later, and he goes up not to the usual Har Sinai, but a Har Sinai that is thunderous, almost volcano-like, with terrible things in with thunder and lightning and thick clouds and darkness, and he walks into that with God's voice, and he doesn't come back. Not in a few hours, not in a few days. He doesn't come back for almost 6 weeks, 40 days. He's not back, right? And now you start to think, well, wait a minute. If I were there, and my leader who had led me out of Egypt, he was there to give us the miracles, the plagues, splitting the sea, who had gave us the man, who had given us the slab, who had done everything, the water when we had none. And God had said before this time, I'm sending you an agent, my messenger, a malach, an angel, who's going to lead you into the land. So who doesn't think that, well, we have the agent and the angel, Moshe, who's leading us, as he has been the whole time, and he'll lead us into the land, and now he ain't here. So then we have to then proceed to say, well, what was this about and why? My second It's coming, the second one. So I said, so we go through the text and see, well, what did the text say? Why do Chazal say this? That's what we're doing. Well, I'm doing the same thing now in the story of the sin of the spies, what we call the Miraglim. I knew it. I saw you coming, so I said, then start. Yeah, I'm looking at the window, so I said, you're walking down. Yeah. So I just was explaining them, since she's had been through our classes before, just wanted to explain what we usually do. And so it's just about time I said, now this week, we're going to be discussing the famous Chet Meraglim, the sin of the spies. Here, let me give you a source sheet, okay? Even though you usually don't have it, but all the work I do to put it out, I figure somebody has to take it, right? Everybody into the sin of the spies, and they came back, and I don't have to give you the basic story. But when we focus upon the text, and that's what we do, as I told you, so what really was their sin? We're not talking about a sin that, they're going to be, suspended for 2 days. It's a sin that says, okay, you're going to die in the desert. You're not going to go into the land that I promised you, and that is the only reason you were leaving Egypt. It's a rough. So what was the sin that was so terrible that God had to punish in such a way? So that's what I want to do. What was so destructive about their actions that warranted them to have capital punishment, which would happen? And so that's what's going to try and touch. And furthermore, even if we do uncover the sin of the nation, if it was a nation, it seemed to have been only 10 spies who really sinned, right? Well, we also read how they admitted their sin. They did tshuva. They admitted their sin at the end of the spies, and they heard their punishment. They said, you're right, God, we did terrible. We did a terrible thing. God usually gives some kind of, okay, I'll give you some type of mercy here. And they even went and said, you're right, and we'll prove that you're right. And these spies convinced us that we'll never be able to conquer the land. We're going to go in and we'll fight it, God. They were willing to go, and they did go up to try and conquer the land, even though they were told they won't be able to. And then even though they were told that God said, don't do it, which is a typical problem that we Jews have. But at any rate, it does seem to cry out from God, okay, God, calm down a little bit. It doesn't have to be that severe. There'll be some kind of mercy that should help. Why wasn't there? And if God doesn't accept this tshuva of them, so we have to really try and unravel the inherent problems that are found in the story and in the text itself that we ordinarily wouldn't necessarily see, and clarify, first of all, what was their mission that they seemingly did not fulfill, right? And let's see if that's true. Now, in the text, I give the opening source, which basically is the beginning of the Parsha of Shalach Lecha, which we'll be reading, please God, 2 weeks from this Shabbat. And let's see exactly what it was that Moshe, or that God had told Moshe what he wanted the people to do. And God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, send agents to scout the land of Canaan, which I'm going to give to the Israelite people. One participant from each of the tribes, one chieftain among them. Each one should be a chieftain. And so Moshe sent them from the wood, from Midbar Paran, all of them being men of consequence. It's a good, I think, a nice translation that they made here. They were all leaders of Israel, and these were their names, and it was nice enough not to give their names because I won't make you memorize them. But there were 12 who went, right, from each of the tribes. By the way, which tribe? I said 12 tribes, and there were 12 tribes. Was there any tribe that wasn't sending a spy? Levi, right. The Leviim, the Levites, did not. We'll get up to why in a second, not in a second, but later on. These were the names of the participants, and Moshe changed the name of Hosea bin Nun to Yehoshua. And when Moshe sent them to scout the land of Canaan, he said to them, go up there into the Negev and into the hill country and see what type of country it is. Are the people who dwell there in it strong or weak, few or many? Is the country in which they dwell good or bad? Are the towns they live in open or fortified? Or is the soil rich or poor? Is it wooded or not? Haitz ba'etz literally means, are there trees in there? It's a wooded or not. And take pains to bring back some of the fruit of the land to us, okay? And all this happened during the season of the first ripe grapes, which takes place clearly in the mid end of the spring and it's actually in the summer. Okay, that's what they're told. So, first of all, we ask the question, who sent the spies? What does the Torah say? Who sent the spies?
It says Hashem.
Right, Hashem. Hashem says, Vayeber Hashem el Moshe. God said that to Moshe. Good. And so it would seem, even though it was Moshe who chose the people and sent them out, it was by God's command that he did so. And if that's the case, I begin with number one. Number one is, if God sent them to do this, why blame them? Why not blame God, but putting them on such a mission in which they could fall? So is there not some blame here? No, they didn't have to send them. They sent them knowing that this would be a problem. So that's one of them. But if we look at the next source, that is a source that sort of reviews the story that we read in Shlach, and this is in Devarim, reviewed by Moshe some 39 years after it's happened. It's in the year 40 of the desert. You were here last week when I discussed about what the book of Devarim is about. That was the review anyway. And there we read, Vatikruvun elai kulchem. This is all Moshe speaking. That's his. You see, you complain about your rabbis have long speeches. This is Moshe's speech, and it took him, how long? All Sefer Devarim. Don't complain. It's only a rabbi saying that. So, at any rate, Moshe says the following. So you all came to me and said, let us send agents ahead to reconnoiter the land for us and bring back a word on the route we shall follow and the cities we shall come to. I approved of the plan, and so I selected among you 12 participants, one representative from each tribe. Not the story that we learned in Shlach, is it? So first of all, we find out that according to Devarim, who was it who sent the people of Israel?
It was their request.
It was their request. They came to us and said, we want you to do it. So it was Moshe who sent them, but only at the behest of the people. They wanted it. And Moshe said, good idea, that's fine. God doesn't seem to have been involved in this at all. In Shlach, we find out, and God said to Moshe, send them to. And here it says, the people came and said, we should send somebody else, right? So we know I'll touch upon, as you probably heard, that the Mefarshim and Rashi says both are true. It was actually God said send them, but it's after the people asked we should send people, agents. Moshe asked God, and God said send these things. So that's how we get around it, and that's fine. The reason why it changes in Devarim, as I've told you last week, Devarim was Moshe's ideas of giving them lessons, and he will tweak here and there something that happens because he's trying to indicate, look at what you did. Devarim is a wonderful lesson to say, it's 40 years here. You could have been here in a year and a half. Look what you did. All of the troubles you've gone through in the desert was because of your sins. And I'm telling you that so that when you go into the land, you don't mess up again like you did here. That's the whole purpose of Sefer Devarim, which is why he'll change it a little bit and he'll go out the fact that God can. He mentions it right after that hits, but he does say that you're the ones who wanted it in the first place, which is true. And God said, okay, and so I sent it to you. So that's one of the reasons it changes. But anyway, the question still stands, okay, God, if you said it's okay, and they asked it, but God and Moshe said, fine, go ahead, do it. We still should be troubled by the fact that you told them to do it. Okay, they sinned, but it was on your okay that they went. So why isn't there some sort of understanding that, maybe we would say, well, we were wrong. I'm sorry. Maybe we shouldn't have sent you, but you did something wrong. But there's a but there, And so there's a Rashi that goes on to say that why is it that it says, I have it in the second page. It's a second continuation of the second source, where I did not translate it, and I apologize, but I will translate it so that it says, "Vayitav be'enai hadavar," that Moshe said, "I thought it was a good idea," and Rashi says, he says, "I thought it was a good idea, but God never thought it was a good idea." But if Moshe thought it was a good idea, and why does he now condemn Israel and criticize them for having done it? You gave the okay. You gave the hashkacha. There was an OU on what you said. You said it's okay, do it. So now you're blaming us? So he gives a wonderful masal. And he says, imagine a man went to as it says here, a donkey, salesman. Okay, donkey salesman, and the guy wants to try out the donkey. Just take a car instead, and you understand this whole thing. Wants to have, and he says, he said, looks like a good donkey to me. He said, you'll sell it to me? Yeah, sure I will. Will you let me have a tryout? Let me go, drive around, see if it's okay? He said, sure, no problem. You can take it. Can I go up on the high and bring the donkey onto mountains and see if he can climb well? He said, sure, absolutely, no problem. Can I go down to, see if they're, he says, wherever you want to go, you can try it. It's a great donkey. I've had a long conversation with him. We're fine. So he says, all right. When the purchaser saw that he was so sure that the donkey was good, he said, you know what? I don't even have to test it. Don't need a test drive. Fine. I'll buy the donkey. Good. And that's exactly what happened. God and Moshe have told Israel what a wonderful, wonderful land it is. How beautiful it was. It's everything that you need. And you're worried about conquering it. God promises you will. Wherever you go, I will be there and I will help you. You got everything you want. Any questions? You got it. You got it. The assumption now would be, so they say, thank you, terrific, we'll go in. What happens? Rather than being a good donkey purchaser, you end up saying, well, we want to see if it's good really. You questioned God's promises and Moshe's promises. And Moshe said, what am I going to do? If they say, we want to see if it's really good, and I say, no, you can't go in. So what are they going to say? Sure, you can't go in. You're afraid to have us look at this land that you claim is so good. If it's so good, why don't you let me go in and see it? So Moshe was excuse the expression, damned if you do, damned if you don't. If I say yes, you might very well sin. If I say no, you're going to for sure rebel against me, and you won't go into that. So I had no choice. That's how Rashi sets up the thing. And it's a very good way of saying that. Moshe said, I thought it was a good idea because I had no choice. Between you and me, I'm not completely, I think it's a very good thing, but it's not, I'm not completely, because the words say, Vayitabe, it was a good idea. He could have said, and Moshe agreed. To say that it was a good idea, Moshe thought it was good. But either way, that's what he says, Rashi says. At any rate, we can actually, when you think about this, understand really a basic concept in the Torah and in Yiddishkeit generally. Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us opportunities. He gives us opportunities to do wonderful things. He gives us opportunities to help the poor. And he gives us opportunities to visit the sick. He gives us opportunities to give tzedakah and to be a good person. It doesn't mean you're going to be. You can pass by the guy who's asking you for money and ignore him. You could not visit a neighbor who is sick because I'm too busy. You could not do the opportunities that God has given you. It doesn't mean it's God's fault. Why'd you give me the opportunity? It's because you failed in all the potential that you had. When you look at it in those cases, that's what was happening here. God said, sure, I'm giving you the potential to come back with a mitzvah, to come back with the fruit, show everybody how wonderful the land is. You have that potential. Are you going to live up to that potential? And basically, the answer was, nope. They didn't. Do I blame Moshe? Do I blame God? We were giving you a chance. You didn't take that chance. You didn't take that opportunity. So that, I think, is a very important way of seeing why we don't blame God or Moshe Chas v'Shalom on why they sinned. They're to blame too. No, they're not to blame. The only one to blame are the people who sinned. Okay, good. So that's should I say lesson number one for us today. When things go wrong, don't blame God. That's all. That's really very true. I recall my parents loved the American musicals. And there was a musical in 1965, I believe. I wasn't born yet. Anyway, in 1965, there was a musical called Land of Milk and Honey. So it was all about Israel. It was very exciting. That's when, most of the people liked Israel. And anyway, so there was there was one funny musical. It wasn't funny. It was a nice song. And it says, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I got the wrong musical. The musical was Ethel Merman. Anyway, so in that musical, it was about I think it was about the Titanic. I don't recall, but anyway, it's about a woman who goes and says, who said you have to have faith in God. And it says, to stop complaining about things. And I think the line in the musical was something like that. When you ask for things and it don't go around and say, "Well, I told you so." God heard God heard your request, but God gave you an answer, but the answer was no. But God doesn't always say, "Give you what you want," because you want it. So that's also the idea. Don't blame God. Things that sometimes He'll say no. Sometimes He gives you opportunities and you don't do them. Anyway. Number two, what do we call this? Chet Meraglim, correct? So what do we call these people who went on this tour, this mission? We call them the Meraglim, of course. There's only one problem. They're never called that in the Torah. They're never referred to as Meraglim in the Torah. You know where we find the word Meraglim? We do find it in the Devarim, in I think it's Chukah, yeah. But it's found when Yoshua sends. What does he send? It says, "Yishlach Yoshua ben Nun min hashitim shnaim meraglim." He sends meraglim. What is told here? What does God say? It says here in the first one, God says, "Send me v'yaturu et eretz Canaan." What does v'yaturu? And the translation was very well done. He said, to scout the land. Tell them to scout the land, to look at land. Vayaturu is very close to the English word to tour. To tour the land. That was their mission. What was one thing clearly missing? Okay, we'll go through exactly what it is. But they weren't meraglim. They weren't sent to be spies. They weren't even sent to be infiltrators or moles or secret agents. That wasn't why they were sent. They were called anashim. They were simply men, outstanding men, but never meraglim. So we're not referring to people who came to be spies. If that were true, we would understand more what their report was. But that wasn't their mission, okay? And number three, what was the mission? If we go through the specifics, we find the following. Latur et haaretz. Again, I point to the usage of the word latur, to tour, or to scout it out. But not to spy. Check out the land. And what specifics? Haaretz mahi. See, what is the land? What is the land that you see? Coming back with a report about that. And understand, ha'am hayoshev aleha. And the people who populate that land. By the way, and this will come important here, the term ha'am, very often in Tanakh, will refer to not simply the people, the nation, but often it refers to the army. So this might be a little bit hinting to that, as we'll see. It says, so go and look at the army or the people, the nation that dwells there. Are they strong or weak? See, that's why I say, how are you going to tell people are strong? But you went into some kind of a gym to see how much weights they can pick up. They're strong or they're weak. They look weak. That's difficulty. That's why I think that could also include the army of Ukraine, and Hama'at hu imrav. Likewise, you could say, is it a large population or not, or is the army big or not? Both are, I think, okay. So that's something. Also, I have to go. Umaha aretz. What about the land, meaning the soil itself in that land? Is it good or bad? And the cities. What about the cities? Besides finding out if it's a fertile land or not, what about the cities themselves? If we're going to try and conquer the land, are the cities a fortress, or they're open cities or not? Right? And again, we're back to the land itself. We said, is it fertile? And it says, Is it a rich or poor? It could be a fertile here and there, but rich or poor, does it have trees or not? That's something very important when coming into war. But just find out, is there fruit there? There may be just, grain. Right? But are there fruits there, which is very good for shade and other things? So and given the fact, it says, bring back the fruit. My first experience, I suppose, when I visited Israel, again, before I was born. Anyway, so it was 1967. It was a month. I think it was a full month after the end of the war. It was their fault. I was going to come early, and they finished the war too early. Anyway, so we come there in July, and I was blown away by many things. But I went and I saw the fruit. I said, what do you mean they have grapes this big? I know grapes. I lived in New York. We had grapes like this. I saw peaches like this. They didn't shave them, so it was still fuzzy, but they were. But and we had it this big. And I said, wow. This is a land that has no water that much, the only thing. So, oh my God. It was the first thing that hit me. And that's exactly what Moshe knew. So he said, bring back the fruit. They'll see what they have there. That was the mission. Those things. It's not a simple spy mission. What's the best way we can attack and what? It doesn't say that. And then the information about the land, if it's good or bad, if the soil is rich or poor, if it's fruitful and trees. And was the enemy strong or weak, fortified or not? Fine, that's military, but not what a spy would do. Who should we attack and from where? Just a basic general information, right? And that clearly shows it wasn't a spying, a military thing. Go in there, sneak, and find what we could do and what's the best way of going in. By the way, Yoshua's spies were called spies, and indeed, part of the things he said, he planned, is that find out, since we're going to attack Jericho first, what's the story over there? That's really more of a military or an idea of how the best for us to attack. But Moshe never says that. It's not a military mission. That's why Yoshua sends 2 men. That's all, not 12. And they're sent secretly, not openly, like Moshe does. And they report not to everybody, they report back to camp, and they report to Moshe and the leaders. And that's all. However, these spies, the 12, do the exact opposite. First of all, whereas in Yoshua it says, Vayishlach Yoshua ben Nun, right? It says Shnayim Anashim Miraglim. It says Baseter. It says he sends it very quietly. No one knows. It's secretly. Here it was publicly. Moshe is told to choose 12 outstanding leaders of the tribes. He does so, and everybody knows who they are. So that's publicly. And these are people that they know, obviously exceptional people. And their mission was not as those whom Yoshua sent. This mission, as we clarified here, was just information about the land, the nature of the land. And when they come back, to whom do they report? If we look here in the Torah, they go, El Kol Ha'am, it says they report to everybody. Do you ever know a spy who was sent by the general to find out how they're going to attack the enemy? And he says, all right, let me get the whole army also. They're reporters also, just not BBC. But anyway, we'll have them over here, and let's tell them what we're going to do. It's unheard of. They were not spies. They were not miraglim, though we call them that. They were tarim et haaretz. And that is a difference, and a crucial difference, to help us understand then what was their sin after all. Okay? And we can ask the question. And it is more or less reflected in what we said before of why. So what was the mission for? What was the mission for? Look at the realities at the time. Israel had left Mitzrayim about a year and a half earlier, right? The nation would number about 2.5 to 3 million individuals. If you had over 600,000 adult males between 20, so you had women also, you had children too. About 2.5, 3 million is the estimate, right? And they'd been living where? In a camp, basically, in camp formation too, for about a year and a half. And they survived. They survived difficult desert conditions, all through the gifts of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who gave them manna and gave them mayim, the manna and the water. But, and this is what's crucial, that was, and they knew that this was a temporary phase. God let them know, we find out in Shemot, for example, that the man is not going to go on, for the next 100,000 years. You're going to have man in the morning. No, that's not what it was going to be. Uvnei Yisrael alchu et haman, they're told in Shalach, after the man is given to them, that God tells, and the Torah tells us, that Bnei Yisrael ate the man only 40 shana for the next 40 years, ad bo'am el eretz noshavet, until they were going to come to the settled land, meaning the land they would settle also, until it could say Eretz Canaan, until they reached the edges of Canaan. So that wasn't the idea. The point is that once they would enter the land, they got to start working. Once they would enter the land, that they would have the responsibility to provide water, to find water to provide, work, till the soil. It says, Kitavo la'aretz. We see that all over the place, in the environment especially. So they would also come in, and they were going to be, and God tells them that even back in Shemot, that they are going to face enemies, the Aborigines, those who live there, right? And they're going to have to fight them to settle the land, and the foreign enemies who are going to say that, no, you can't come, it's ours. I know it sounds crazy, but believe it or not, some people actually think that they own Standard Israel. Anyway, but all of this was going to be done with God's help, but it had to be done by you. That's the difference between before the splitting of the sea, where God tells Moshe, and Moshe tells the people, Hashem yilachem lachem, God will fight for you. Just v'atem taharishun, and you just keep quiet and stop howling and complaining. God will take care of it. And then just a few prakim later, when they fight with Amalek, God doesn't tell them, okay, I'll fight. God tells them no, and Moshe gets up and says, here comes Yoshua. Took him out of the kollel and said to him, okay, you've got to now gather an army and you've got to fight. Why? Because Moshe, remember in those days, it was before the Chet of Meraglim, they were planning on coming in just a few months later. He said, you got to learn. It's not a world of miracles. God will help you. We have to realize when the miracles are there. Some people don't even see it when it's in front of their eyes. That's why in Modim every day we say, every day and day, all times of days, there are miracles. Do we see them? Do we recognize them? Do we appreciate them? All too often we don't. But life will be a natural life. It's not Nimon HaMashiach. There's going to be a regular life where you're going to have to do what has to be done to function as a real country. And you got to start that. He starts that with Amalek. He doesn't say, I'll do it like he did before. He had to start. So there it was. When they're going into the land now, and they're planning to, remember, it's a year and a half after they leave Mitzrayim, and now God's telling them, you have to fight natural ways. I will help, but you've got to have the army. You've got to go. When we take the beginning of a midbar and elsewhere, whenever God takes a population census, whenever Moshe does, it's censored by Kol Yotzei Tzava b'Yisrael, all of military age. So there was an acceptance and the assumption that they're going to be armies. They had to fight. At any rate, and although God promised that He would help them, they had to undertake all of these tasks through their own initiative. If you look at Devarim Yud Aleph, I believe it's the third source that I have for you, that I served for you. In the English it says, God promises the following, actually through Moshe's words, but he says the following, if then you faithfully keep all this instruction I command you, loving your God, walking in all God's ways, holding fast to Hashem, then Hashem will dislodge before you all these nations. You will dispossess nations greater and more numerous than you. Every spot upon which your foot treads shall be yours. Your territory shall extend from the wilderness to Lebanon and from the river, the Euphrates, until the western sea. So that's the promise. So wherever you go, but I'll help you. Promise. But you got to do it. That's the whole point. So this is the reality that Israel now stood in the desert. And they were going to confront now military war. And they had to therefore establish what we would call a national homeland. Yeah, not a dirty word. That's what it was. National term. So they needed the information. They needed regarding military options, fine. But economic conditions, agricultural realities. So when I asked, so why do they want to go? That's why God said, okay, send them. It's a good idea. Let them know what it is, okay? And so it makes certainly full logic that what we would call this is, I suppose, a national fact-finding mission. That's what it was. It was a fact-finding mission, and to better understand the land and how to prepare for their entry. To establish the borders. They also had to consider, by the way, the partitioning of the tribes. Why do I say that? That's why Moshe chooses one per tribe. Check out the land that you like. Which land do you think is best for your tribe? That's one of the reasons. And that's the reason why which tribe was not one of those who sent a agent. Levi. Why?
Because Hashem would appoint him.
No. Well, yes and no. They never got a piece of a section of land. They had, cities here and there, 42 of them, right. But they never had a portion of the land that the tribe should say, well, should we do it here or there? It's God who would give them these sentences. That's why Levi wasn't there. That's one of the proofs that the whole point of this was to prepare for the taking over the land, but not militarily, to rather know that where different tribes will dwell. And that's why it was not a war mission or even so much of a military mission. It was a fact-finding mission. And actually, if we go later on in the end of Bamidbar, Matos Maseh, when they do give out the portions of land, then you see that it's very, very, very different. And then you see in the fourth, again here I didn't give the English, but it's simple. There you see in the fourth source that these were the people who yinchalul lachem, who will I guess inherit for you these these are the agents of each tribe who will in effect take on and give over this section. The ones in charge are Elazar, Kohen, and Yoshua. And Nasi Echad, again, one leader for a tribe. And these are the people, and it goes on through the names, so on and so forth, all of them without Levi. And these are the people that who would give over these portions, and it goes through which the portions were. That's who did it. But they first had gone in to see what the land was like, but that was, of course, 38 years earlier. But at the time when they thought they were going in, so that was a logical reason why. Okay? And that's what Moshe actually does here. U'item et haaretz. Go and see the land, to scout the land, tell us what the land is. And that's why he sent one person per tribe. And that's why he sends them publicly. The whole land, all the people should see, oh, good land, and this is that. And they may come back and say, look, I looked at the area of Yerushalayim, it's terrific, we should have that. Oh, look at the area over there by the seas, we'd be able to have boats. That's the whole reason for it, okay? And in the final analysis, that's a proof that it was never meant to be a military mission, or a spying mission even, right? So I actually have here, which I don't know if I want to spend the time doing it, but just to show you the differences between the mission sent by Moshe and that one sent by Yoshua. I touched upon it already, so I'll just put it away. So basically, the people sent, the agents sent by Yoshua, the two of them. By the way, who are they? Very good. How do you know?
The text says there.
It does not.
It does.
Text does not say who they were.
Oh, I was told.
Okay, when I start Sefer Yoshua, we'll touch about that. But again, one of the things the text doesn't know, Chazal see it, do it, they share that, but the text doesn't say that at all. Okay? That's why I take the text. Anyway, clearly, they did have a military reason. These were military spies to plan the military conquest of Yericho, because they knew the first city that it says the first city they would see would be the city of Yericho, and that's what they did. They just went into Yericho, and it was therefore for military reasons. It wasn't to see should we go in or shouldn't we go in. We're going in and we're going to invade, but we're going to start with Yericho. What's the mood over there? That's basically what Yoshua told these two spies. Whereas Moshe did not talk about that way. For him, it was an inquiry commission. I feel like I'm, in the government. They found the good names for this, to provide the people with the information to help them plan how to divide the land, to establish, institutions and so on and so forth. That's what his thing. Now, understanding all of this, what was the sin? That's how I started this. What was their sin? So let's see if we can do it quickly. If you look at their return, so there we find out in the fifth, did I forget the English here too? Yeah, in the fifth source, look, it says, this is what they told him. They came back and they told the people, we came to the land and you sent us to, and it does indeed flow with milk and honey, and here are the fruits you told us to bring back. However, the people who inhabit the country are powerful. The cities are fortified, they're very large. Moreover, we saw the Amalekites there. Now, so far, was that so terrible? Didn't Moshe ask, tell us, is the nation powerful or not, many or not? So, I don't think it's so terrible, right? Let's go, let's see how. And Amalekites dwell in the Negev, the Chite, Yevusi, Amorite, you asked about the land, you asked about the people and where they live, and so they told them that. And I told them, is there anything terrible about what they said?
Yes.
What?
They were sowing despair. We can't do it.
When did they say that?
Where did they say?
But
The people are powerful. The cities.
Did they say? But didn't Moshe ask them to tell?
The Malikites are there. Their experience with the Malikites was.
Oh, that's excellent, by the way. But God did ask, is it a stronger? And they were telling him that. What you said is very good.
But the tone.
Because the fact that it says, okay. But what crucial thing did they say that undermined everything? And it's one word. Ephes. However, in other words, everything is good, but that's what did it. Ephes.
That's easy.
However, yeah. However, they're strong. What they should have said is,
What's that?
Ephes means however. All they had to say is, and the people there are strong, and they live over here and that. That would have changed the entire tone, which, by the way, you were correct about. The entire tone of the report. All they say, and by the way, they did this. They shouldn't have. But they didn't say and. They said, but it ain't so good because they didn't say it, but that's exactly what they refer to, what they imply. So that few thing is exactly the sin.
But there's one more thing.
And then, correct, the other thing you said, why would they even mention Amalek?
No, it was one thing.
Because that was the one experience they had with war, was the Amalekites. These wild crazies who attacked people, who attacked killed the children, killed the women, they attacked the weak people. Because today nobody ever does that. So they had fear. The fact that they purposely include that also reflects what their real feelings were. Yes.
But it says, this is what they told him. We came to the land that you sent us to.
Very good.
They requested it. It was their initial request.
Okay.
So that's where the seeds of despair was sown.
That's very nice. The fact that God had promised they would go to, and that they asked to, and yet they couch it in terms of the land that you sent us to. Not that God has promised us, but all over the Torah it says, the hearts asher nishbati l'Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. Doesn't say the land that God had promised to our forefathers. It says that land that you sent us to. I like that very much. Thank you.
I said the same thing. The one
Very good.
you sent me.
Yeah, very good. Yes, in the beginning. Correct. But that was true. All right. So the conclusion reflected the opinion of 83% of the people who went there, right? The commission, 10 of the 12 said that. The two were disagreed with the majority, but let's face it, if you get 10 out of 12 of the finest people who are doing, and they say one thing, would you say, well, the two are right? You don't do that. Yeah, they were arguing what it was, but okay, I have a few minutes. So, although they're somewhat objective in their report, I did point out however, and you did Amalek and that would be okay. Were the rest of it that ends the 12th chapter of Perek Yud Bet. In Perek Yud Gimel, that's when finally Kalev and eventually Yoshua speak out against it and said, no, that's not true. Everything's okay. So if I would present to you this thing, the poor people come and hear the report, they're told how wonderful the land is going to be, and they're going to come in, and then they're told we're not strong enough, and it's awful and terrible. Did they all have to be punished? It was the people that God and that Moshe appointed, and they're the ones who came with the report. And so he went to the people, and the people listened to the report of Moshe's choice people. And they said, it's awful. Then what did the people say? Oh, Moshe, they chose the wrong people. These are innocent, former slaves who say, "Oh my God!" Again, like I did with the Chet HaMarag of the golden calf. Why? Well, let's take a step back and say, if you were living at the time, what would you do? You would promise a wonderful land just to get out of get the sand out of between your toes and get into a land that has places. And now your representative is chosen by your leader, who is telling us how good the land is, tells us that there's no way we're going to conquer.
But I would have asked to see the land. They had.
They did. They spent 40 days looking at the land. They were the agents. They were sent. They were the upstanding people.
But they were.
And they come back. Huh? They did.
Request, I wouldn't have requested to see. I would have.
But what can I tell you? You're a tzaddik, so the most people would not be. If you came in as a former slave. And this is what you're told, we have to stop here. But Amir Hashem, I'll try and finish this up.
Thank you very much.
Okay.